All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me and Nat today. My name is Sunyan. I'm the developer experience engineer here at the MuckRock Foundation. MuckRock is kind of like a multi-pronged organization. We have our own like research team with the Sunlight Research Foundation that kind of merged with us earlier this year or earlier this past year. We have our own tooling. So we have MuckRock Requests, which is our public records filing service. We have DocumentCloud, which we'll talk a little bit about today, as well as several other tool sets. And we're trying to expand that with adding new tools to our repertoire, engaging with journalists, public transparency organizations, accountability organizations, lawyers, and so on. And then, of course, we advocate for the freedom of information. So we have our own like kind of advocacy portion of that three prong. My name is Sunny again. I'm a developer experience engineer. That just means I work with our tooling mostly and just work with developers and our users to kind of make better products and for it to work with less bugs. We're joined here today with Nat Loans. Nat is with the Philly Transit Riders Union, who does kind of public transit accountability and transparency work, specifically in the Philadelphia metro area. Nat, if you'd like to introduce yourself a little bit more, I'm going to hand that off to you. Otherwise, I'll just go back after you introduce yourself. I'll go back to announcements. So, Nat, go ahead.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Daniel. And yeah, thanks for organizing this. So the Philly Transit Riders Union um, was started in 2020 by me and I think 11 other founding members. And it was started because there was not really like a organizing first type organization in Philadelphia that would advocate for public transit. And out in Pittsburgh, there's a great organization called Pittsburghers for Public Transit that we kind of wanted to emulate. So they kind of really help us get started. That's about it.
Awesome. Yeah. I noticed one of the attendees who signed up, I'm not sure if they're with us right now, but they were from that organization. So I was curious to see if there was going to be any interaction between you all and kind of what the story is there. Like, did Philly come first? Did Pittsburgh come first? Yeah. How did you hear about the Pittsburgh project? I'm curious. Talk to me maybe a little bit about your own founding.
Um, yeah, I guess the Pittsburgh project, well, it kind of organizing for public transit came out of just being a transit rider and being like, this is bad, like kind of like across the board. And I'd say I'm a bit of an introvert, but when you're at the bus stop and it's like nasty outside and you're like, where the hell is this goddamn bus? It's like conversations come pretty easy. And it's like you can, it's easy to figure out where people are at and what they're willing to do to improve their conditions. But the Pittsburgh group, I had when we were thinking about starting this group, I did a lot of research into like Philly's history of transit organizing, and of course what was around currently. And the Pittsburgh group was like it seemed like one of the best groups that existed. The LA Bus Riders Union, there's actually a documentary about them,
Hmm.
but that was like another kind of template where it was like this is where we need to go with this.
Yeah, totally. I feel like a lot of my own organizing background is just meeting with people during our shared frustrations. I think it is a really powerful like uniting factor. So before we dive into a little bit about your work with the Philly Transit Writers Union and kind of how you use DocumentCloud, I do just want to give two announcements because last time I didn't get to the announcements, so I'm just going to get to that first. So first, I mentioned a little bit about our tooling, including MuckRock Requests and DocumentCloud and a couple others that we've added recently, which is PluckyWire, which is a newswire service for newsrooms, and Dataset, which is kind of like DocumentCloud, but for like tabular data. So if you're getting things like spreadsheets or CSVs or something like that, and you want an easy way to be able to import it into a collaborative interface that's not like a Google Sheet, you could use Dataset, and you can actually log in with your MuckRock account now. We are looking for more tooling to add to our repertoire. So if you are a developer who's developing something that could be replicated in other newsrooms or by other organizations, it doesn't have to be something super complicated. It can be um, like a data visualization template or tool, and you'd like to add that and make that available to others. We do have an application process that's still open. So you'll see that in the agenda notes. Additionally, MuckRock, along with the Bruckner Center and the National Freedom of Information Act Coalition, we're hosting Sunshine Fest. It's in March. It's between March 15th and March 16th and 17th in Washington, D.C. There is a registration fee. It's $50, but the tickets are available now and they're running out. We have a few left. If you are interested in transparency work, filing public records requests, and you'd like to learn more or get better at filing records requests or digesting your public records requests, I encourage anyone to register the event. It's going to be great. It's a 2-day event, Monday and Tuesday, I believe, on the 16th and 17th of March. Yeah, that's all I've got in terms of announcements. Nat, I'll hand it back to you. Can you talk a little bit about your work with the Philly Transit Riders Union? Kind of what kind you involved? You mentioned a little bit about like kind of being pissed off about late buses and the cold. But how did you meet with others who were interested in organizing about it? Um, how did you guys like start to organize? And then can you talk a little bit about like your first investigation, if you will?
Sure, yeah. So the start was the 11 people I had kind of mentioned who were a lot of people who had grown up here,
Mhm.
some people who had worked for SEPTA, just transit riders in general, and the founding group was kind of like spread out all across the city. And
How did you guys like meet? Like you're in different parts of the city. Like did you just like organize on Facebook or something like that?
yeah, it's kind of
I'm curious.
you get these people who are like into thinking about public transit and they kind of find each other. Um,
Okay.
and like one of the founding organizers, had actually worked out in Pittsburgh, worked for the Amalgamated Transit Union. So she was a real guiding light as far as like how to do actual organizing. Um, yeah.
So there was some like core of like more maybe hardened organizers who would like work with transit advocacy in the past, and then like a little bit of like impromptu meeting of other folks, I guess.
Yeah,
That makes
exactly.
Yeah. Um, what brought you into like what brought the Transit Riders Union into like the transparency space? Like, did you have any background in organizing or like filing public records requests or anything like that? How did you like what brought you there?
Well, I guess when we got started, I had more of a background in doing records requests than organizing.
Mhm.
Um, and um,
Is it
yeah,
just like for your day job or is it just like a niche interest?
yeah, just kind of like a general interest, maybe a little bit of like a desire to be a pain in the ass to people in power. It's just like a tool that I knew that, you could use to press people's buttons in a way and to like try and change things. It's a lot like the first kind of use case that we'll get into. It's a real good way to pitch journalists on stories where it's like a lot of times um you can sell it if you kind of do a lot of the work up front. It's like a lot easier to pitch something where it's like, well, I got this stuff and you can go run with it from like this point.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, it's a muscle, right? Like
Yep.
when I first started filing public records requests, I wasn't working at MuckRock. It was years before I did use MuckRock to file my first request, but it was just kind of like, okay, there's like this public information. It's a right of ours. It's a right of all of ours, and we should flex it, right? Like we should um, be able to use it and kind of use it in a way that constructively hold people accountable. So yeah, I totally hear that.
Totally. Couldn't put it better.
So uh, you mentioned that you had had some public records request experience in the past. Um, were you the one to kind of like motivate folks to then go the public records request route with the union, or does someone else have an idea? I'm specifically mentioning the SEPTA pay cuts, which you all investigated. Kind of, where did you get the idea for that? I know there was like a tip involved, but who like kind of what motivated the person to kind of follow up on it?
Yeah, I guess I was the impetus for doing the request work just because I had experience doing it.
Mhm.
But really, like you said, it's the tip. I guess for the backstory here, during COVID, the SEPTA executive team kind of announced that they were taking this like 10% kind of like solidarity pay cut type thing, which is like
Mhm.
whatever. It's not nothing, but in the same regard, you see something like that, and it's like, come on, guys, this is like a PR stunt. Let's this is serious business here. Like, get with it.
Yeah.
Um, so, I was having a conversation with the transit workers union, one of the transit workers union shop stewards. Um, and we were talking about, other kind of COVID related stuff, how drivers were handling it, health concerns, all the COVID kind of related stuff. But he had just kind of offhandedly mentioned he was like, and that executive pay cut, like a few of those dudes like didn't even take that. And I was like, oh, well, that'll be very easy to like that's like it's a very simple public records request. So I mean he kind of teed that one up. I just knew that the tool was there. It was like a very easy request to write. They responded right away, and once we had the documents, it was just a matter of going through them, looking at numbers and being like, oh, it started here and ended here. Um, for this
And
guy.
what do they have to say for themselves? Like, did the executives say anything? Kind of like, hey, yeah, we didn't take this pay cut, or like, we don't know why. Like, I know one of them said like, we don't know why this other person didn't get the pay cut, but did they
Yeah,
have any explanation at all for you?
yeah,
Anything?
their initial response, I think it might be quoted in the annotations in the our
Hmm.
DocumentCloud thing, but they claimed it was like a payroll glitch and like they didn't know what happened. It was kind of like it seemed like they were just kind of caught with their pants down kind of situation, and like they
Yeah, they
just
weren't
said,
expecting to get a public records request about it. They were just like, oh yeah, let's take it for granted. We're certainly doing these pay cuts like in solidarity, I'm sure.
yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. Um, I don't know how familiar you are with MuckRock, but we've done a lot of these kind of collaborations with organizations that are not traditionally journalism organizations. They're not comprised of just purely journalists, including like myself. I was part of a collective called Lucy Parsons Labs, which was kind of like a police transparency collective. And we are basically just users of the MuckRock service and DocumentCloud to kind of like enhance our public records requests and things like that. So we're MuckRock as an organization has a long history of kind of like working with groups like the Philly Transit Riders Union, and orgs like the EFF, advocacy and transparency and accountability organizations. We're pretty familiar with it. So we're obviously a journalism organization, but we closely collaborate with these kinds of organizations. And I noticed that with the SEPTA pay cuts that we were talking about, um, you guys had kind of collaborated with the Philly Inquirer. I'm wondering what that process was like for you. Did you already have connections there? Did you get like ignored, or were folks like pretty receptive to the documents? Um, yeah, I'm just curious to hear about your collaboration in that space, because I think that kind of like community organizing, accountability sphere with journalism, I think there's powerful avenues for collaboration, and I think that there are lessons learned there. So I'm curious to hear about your experience and if you had anything there.
yeah, sure. I guess as part of our organizing, something else I tried to do was just build relationships with journalists the same way you would with transit riders. Um, so their transit beat writers would pretty often Um, the guy at the Inquirer for a while would actually kind of call in just to chat every week, like kind of like old style kind of journalism. Just like call up and be like, "What's up, Nat? Like, what's happening? What have you heard? Like, what's interesting?" Um, but Juliana Reyes, who I do not believe is at the Inquirer anymore, unfortunately, brilliant writer, brilliant, thoughtful journalist. was kind of an acquaintance, and she was on their investigations desk at the time, so it was real easy. I was just like, "What's up, Juliana? It's Nat. Like, check out these documents, and this fucked up." And she was like, "Yep, all right. Well, I'll see you later and write a story about this."
Awesome. All right. Yeah. I mean, that really helps when you do have th those personal connections. And that also sounds familiar from my own experience. Sometimes it would be like a cold tip that I would give to folks, but often or not, it would be somebody that I knew or that an acquaintance knew to kind of get that collaboration off the ground. Um, we talked a little bit about, public records requests. You mentioned that this one was pretty easy, that you didn't really get any, like, they responded rather quickly. Myself, I'm kind of like somewhat familiar with Pennsylvania's public records laws. I filed a couple in the past, mostly with police agencies who are less than receptive. So I'm sure other agencies are a little bit more. But I'm curious, like, if you filed any other public records requests, if you've gotten any pushback, specifically, like, I know that you guys got kind of emails about um, different SEPTA officials kind of talking about the Transit Riders Union and like monitoring like your Facebook page and your group calls and stuff like that. So I'm wondering, like, did you get any pushback or delays or any kind of like anti-transparency kind of experiences while filing that request or other ones that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I can actually share details about that request and another one where I actually did get pushback. Um, so with the Riders Union one, it, if I remember correctly, it was pretty straightforward. There wasn't like a lot of back and forth with the agency. It was like they yielded like a giant PDF. It was like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, like
Mm,
pretty easily. Um, and I know lawyers who have done um, whose firms like work on the agency side to like fulfill these requests. They're basically like contracted by public agencies to do these things.
mhm,
And talking to this person, they said what their firm like suggests to public agencies is just give up the documents. Like who cares? Like you're gonna do yourself a lot more harm by trying to hide shit and probably like maybe get dinged for it financially. Um,
mhm.
which I think is a really smart strategy because we had these documents and now it was like on us to like do something about it, which I think is like a smart strategy and good
Yeah,
advice.
it pushes the ball to your court instead of trying to like sweep it under the rug or be, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and like the flip side of that is an unrelated request that I did. The city tried to withhold records, and we took them to court, and we won, and we got them to settle for $26,000. So it was like
Wow.
they tried to break the law. We called them on it, and they had to like give my lawyer a bunch of money, which as a citizen makes me kind of pissed off. Where it's like, why didn't you
Yeah.
guys just give up the records like you're supposed to? The law is pretty clear here.
Yeah, totally. Or do you feel comfortable sharing what the documents were about? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, sure. It was a Philadelphia has a an appointed school board, not an elected school board.
Oh.
Um, and they're appointed by the mayor, and the mayor like collects applications from school board applicants. So I thought I
Hmm.
would file a request to get all the applications, because that way you know who they're picking and who they're not picking. Like, and you can, I don't know, you can make that available to people and be like, hey, like, look at these great candidates that are being looked over by this mayor in favor of these other candidates who might have connections to charter schools or like other stuff like that.
Oh yeah, couldn't possibly be a source of attention there. Yeah, that's interesting. That's super interesting. I'm very familiar with that kind of experience. For me, like when I've in the past when I've filed public records requests, it's often been with police agencies who are less than forthcoming and definitely more willing to just eat the cost of the whatever legal requests they need to be able to hide whatever, whether it's like a surveillance technology that they're trying to use or um, they're like trying to hide emails or something like that. Um, so it's interesting to see different perspectives. I've unfortunately had to go through like the lawsuit route really, really frequently. I feel like more frequently than I've wanted to. But I can imagine that for different types of agencies that this kind of um, phenomenon is at a different frequency. So it doesn't surprise me to hear that maybe like um, transit agencies may be less likely to go to court than kind of other agencies. And I recently did a kind of like an analysis of agencies in our database on and how often they fulfill requests, and it does seem like uh, our most responsive agency was actually like a public school system. So I am curious to see like maybe they're more risk averse and they're less likely to uh, try to take something to court because maybe they don't feel as comfortable, with a lack of transparency and things like that. So that's super interesting. Um, so we mentioned kind of the SEPTA pay cuts, and I briefly mentioned, but maybe you want to talk a little bit more about it. Kind of y'all filed a public records request where it seems like uh, SEPTA officials were kind of trying to monitor your group. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, what prompted you to file the request? Did you have suspicions that somebody was showing up to your meetings, um, or otherwise? How did it feel getting those back? Like, did it change anything about how you guys organized? Yeah, I'm curious about that experience.
Yeah, that's a great question. So unlike the executive pay cut request, that wasn't really part of a campaign. That was just like I had heard about that through this shop steward and was like, oh, like, well, that'll be easy to solve with a records request. Like we can
Mhm.
like zip that up right now. But the overcrowding, the request that had all the proof of this transit agency monitoring our group and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in that request. That came out of a campaign about like um, SEPTA bus overcrowding during the pandemic,
Mhm.
specifically on Route 23, which is like a very heavily used bus route that runs from Center City up into like all the way up to Chestnut Hill. So basically, geography of the city, Chestnut Hill is like far northwest. So it's like a very long bus route. A lot of people ride it. It goes right through Germantown. And we had some members in Germantown who were like, "Yo, this bus is fucking crowded." And it's like it does not feel safe. It's packed. It's packed like it was like pre-pandemic. This is like scary. So
Yeah,
that request came out of an actual campaign.
yeah, it's like a vector for disease at that point. Yeah, it's real risky. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um,
Um, But yeah, how did it get to like kind of transform from trying to investigate this overcrowding to like getting these kind of documents? I'm curious. There's a longer story there.
Yeah, it was just the wording of the request, I think, like also kind of pulled in all of these like what I thought were like pretty crazy evidence of like SEPTA employees like monitoring our like kind of like private listserv, which was like not difficult to get on. Like we would put you
Yeah,
on if you showed up to a TRU meeting. It's not like super secret.
yeah,
Um, and also like monitoring like private Facebook groups and like taking screenshots and like sharing it with his supervisor, which is just like, dog, what are you doing at work? Like this is weird behavior. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, I would never spy on someone for my boss. Like that's
yeah,
like traitor. That's like class traitor shit. Like, why would you do that? So like all of the all of that stuff was kind of part of this request, which also had a lot of proof of the TRU kind of like running these people like ragged a little bit. Like they would get like real bent out of shape about like we were just like put up like flyers about contact us about overcrowding. Um and like yeah, they would like send screenshots. It was just like yeah, it was wild. It was crazy.
yeah. So that's interesting. Like it wasn't actually a targeted request. It was like a byproduct of a different request. That's super interesting that sometimes the request that we file and what kind of interesting things we pick out of it are two completely different things. Um, interesting. And I guess that got pulled in, I imagine, probably because of like the conversations that were actually happening in your listserv and Facebook group. Like probably these subjects were like being mentioned. And so because of that, they're like fair game to a public records request because they were conversing about those things.
Yeah, it
That's
was wild. Like they like materials from our group would end up on their emails, and like because we were asking for like materials from them, it would match terms that we had used in our communications. So like a lot of the request was in general about like overcrowding. I was just kind of curious about how, if they like gave a shit basically about transit riders at all, or if they were like
Mhm.
tracking this stuff. And it just pulled in all this other like very crazy material.
That's super interesting. It's like a request inception, like a transparency inception, where you're like, I'm the one talking about this, and then the agencies are monitoring my communications, but I also want to like see what they're talking about, and it pulls in that information. That's super interesting.
Exactly.
Um, I've like tried similar requests like back in the day, LPL, Lucy Parsons Lab, would do a lot of like public records requests with the mayor's office, especially Mayor Rahm Emanuel, and then Mayor Lightfoot. We've gotten like some mentions of like our communications. I imagine that a lot of their conversations, they knew that we were really privy to public records requests, so they would later like. I know that like Lori Lightfoot, for example, had her own signal group where she would talk to like other members of her staff and um, other mayors, major mayors would talk to each other. So I'm curious to see if like your publications of these documents kind of transformed how they're communicating about, um, yeah, just people interested in SEPTA and in public transit. I wonder if they're like trying to be more discreet about how they're communicating because they now know that like these things are subject to public records requests. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
wonder.
yeah, super interesting. Um, so to talk a little briefly, like, how did you hear about like MuckRock and DocumentCloud specifically? I know that for both of these kind of investigations and campaigns, like you use DocumentCloud. So I'm curious, and specifically our annotation tool on DocumentCloud. How did you hear about it? You're not a journalist, so primarily like this has been available to journalists and a couple other organizations. So I'm really curious how you all heard about it, what got you using it, and kind of yeah.
I guess I first heard of MuckRock like a long time ago because of FOIA machine, which I think is called something different now. MuckRock requests, right?
So FOIA machine does still exist.
Okay.
It is just kind of literally we might be rebranding MuckRock requests into FOIA machine later on. But FOIA Machine, as it is an open source project, does still exist. I think it's foiamachine.org. And MuckRock Request is the commercial product. So FOIA Machine will file the request, but all the follow-up you have to do on your own. Whereas MuckRock Request does the automatic follow-up. It allows you to appeal. It allows you to pay for requests, things of that nature, kind of like automates a lot of like the grunt work of filing the public records request. Whereas FOIA Machine is like send the request. It's got the same agency information as MuckRock Request does. It files the request, but all the follow up you have to do on your own, essentially. Um, yeah. So that's how you heard about MuckRock. But what about Document Cloud? Like, what got you interested in kind of using that?
I think just like looking at what else y'all have made, and just like seeing Document Cloud and being like a research dork, and it was just like I think maybe I had started out using like Google Docs or something, but it was just like the Document Cloud was just so much better at with the annotations in particular. You could like really kind of like build a clear narrative um
Mhm.
using requests. You could one of the things we would do is like sometimes in like emails to the like large mailing list, we might mention that they were like, spying on our group with like a direct link to Document Cloud. So it was like, you can make these claims about things that are true, but you don't have to go on a whole tangent and explain the whole thing. It's like people that are curious will check that out, but it's like you can say that and it will be true. And I
Mhm.
think it shows like the group's impact.
Yeah,
Um,
totally,
yeah.
totally. That's super interesting. So it seems like you learn about kind of like Muck Rock in general from FOIA Machine, which is kind of like our legacy product, and then maybe we're interested in other kind of like research tools, and you kind of felt maybe dissatisfied with how that was working in like a workflow with like Google Docs. So that kind of brought you into Document Cloud. That's super interesting.
Yep.
That's super interesting because most of the time I feel like the experience is, oh, I'm part of this newsroom. This is what we've always used. This is what like my predecessor used, and we're currently using it. Or um, it's like an advocacy organization that kind of heard it either word by word of mouth, or it's somebody that we've collaborated with in the past. So it's super interesting to meet somebody that's kind of heard about Document Cloud and then kind of like, oh, I just want to look at what other tools and offerings that you have. That's super cool. I encourage you. I did check out, I noticed your email address, and I did check out that site, and I noticed that y'all did some data visualizations in the past. So I encourage you, if you're looking at other kind of products, do take a look at Dataset. It's supported by a guy named Simon Willison, who does brilliant work on data in the data visualization sphere, and kind of like the new burgeoning LLM field. He's just a really brilliant guy. Very cool product, and you can log in with your MuckRock account. If you need help setting that up, I can totally get that arranged. But yeah, super interesting to hear that you heard kind of in a sideline capacity. So you mentioned it a little briefly. Were you the primary user on the Document Cloud account? Were there others kind of like looking, you mentioned like this long PDF, were others kind of collaborating with you in reading through this large document set? Or was it primarily you and then like you would share your findings with other researchers? I'm curious to see like if you use in a kind of collaborative capacity or more of like a this is where I host primary source materials.
Um, no, it wasn't so much collaborative. We did kind of go over, excuse me, go over the documents together. But I was kind of like, I think at first, like using like a private document to like just kind of, we would get together and I would make notes using that and then kind of like clean it up and then make a public one with, I don't know, cleaned up annotations and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, that's so cool. Very, very interesting. Um, so Philly Transit Riders Union, what are you all working on currently? What kind of projects do you have going on right now? Any kind of recent SEPTA news that we should know about, or organizing efforts? Yeah, I'm curious to see, well, what is in the future for you all?
Yeah, right now the TRU is kind of in hibernation mode. It's hard. We found out that it's hard to run an organization without money, which you would figure would be something that would be obvious, but I feel like it maybe wasn't obvious to us at the time. So it's kind of on hold, I think, until that's kind of sorted out. But as far as like other public transit organizing efforts to check out, um, Transit for All PA is like a statewide transit organizing effort here in Pennsylvania, which I
Hmm.
absolutely encourage anyone to check out. It is like desperately needed. I don't know how familiar with Pennsylvania anyone is, but it's kind of like a garbage state. It is just like very difficult to have anything nice here. Um,
Really big. I mean, that's one thing I know, and kind of different environments. Like there's Philly, and then there's like the rest of the state. I mean, there's Pittsburgh, which is also a big city, but I know I've like driven through Pennsylvania. And it's like you're in two different worlds when you're in the urban or rural areas. So that's at least been my experience, and it's also really long.
Yeah, definitely all those things. I mean, the deck is definitely stacked against us here in the cities as far as like trying to get like the bare minimum of public services. So something like a statewide organizing effort, kind of like bringing together all these different areas. I mean, a lot of rural areas really depend on public transit too. So it's like being able
Yeah.
to like link together like people who live in bigger cities with people in smaller cities across Pennsylvania would be really powerful. And Transit for All PA is like working on that. So that's one thing. That is one transit organizing effort I encourage everyone to check out.
Do you all share a lot of memberships? I'm assuming a lot of the people that were involved with TRU are also now involved in that effort.
Yeah, the TRU is one of the founding members, and it is administered by Pittsburghers for Public Transit, who I mentioned earlier. Shout out to
Mhm.
Dan. I see Dan right there. Dan's from PPT. Much love to Dan. But yeah, yeah, it's like yeah, it's good. It's good and highly necessary.
Totally, totally. Um, all right. I think I've kind of like got all the kind of gist and all any questions that I've had answered. Anything else that you'd like to let us know about? I can pause the recording now and then we can talk kind of talk back and forth. So let me do that really